do a great presentation for us. Before we begin, I just want to go over a little chapter business. Last night, we held our first in-person meeting, which was great. It was attended by about 140 people right here in Emeryville, and I think it was a successful night. We gave a presentation or an award to Mike Rievek. Many of you know Mike, who retired. He was president for over 13 years for the San Francisco chapter. One of the things we're trying to do for the chapter is we're trying to increase membership. We have seen a decline of membership since COVID. Hopefully with the end of the pandemic here, start meeting again and start increasing that membership, getting everybody involved, get some good training going, and some great networking. Other than that, we're looking forward to some upcoming calendar events, and Rose, our chapter secretary, will put the dates for those.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I just wanted to ditto what Angel said. Last night was great. I think everyone had a terrific time. So our next presentation is on May 17th, and it's titled Ready Day One, Bridging the PDC to Accreditation Gap. And then our next in-person event is in Lake Tahoe, the 49th Annual Institute at Squaw Creek, June 1 to 3, and that includes golf. And then finally in July, another great event at Black Hawk Golf event, July 25 again, on a Monday. Thank you.
Awesome. If you want to sign up for that golf tournament, just go online to cc.org and you can sign up there. All right, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chris Tokis, Roy Lobo, and Ali Summer. We've got a great presentation on 2030 seismic compliance, Mpc3 Mpc3 and maybe a little more mixed in, I guess. Hopefully, Chris, I didn't mess that up too much.
No, perfect.
But I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Good morning. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you. So I will share my screen, I guess, so that we can start the presentation. So when Beth called me, I guess, so that they need a presentation, I guess, so she said, we need both topics, Mpc3 and Mpc3. I said, oh, each topic technically deserves, I guess, so its own presentation, but again, for our CC, okay, so membership, okay, so which CC, okay, so for us, okay, so it is close to our heart, okay, so you always have included us, and we always want to be with you. Sorry that we missed your event last night, okay, so, but next time, okay, so we'll be there. It sounds like it was a great event. So today, okay, so rather than me, okay, so giving the whole presentation, so I invited also Roy Lobo and Ali Zumer. I guess you know, one form or another. I guess most of you have met them. It's important that you know them. It's important, I guess, so that you know who they are. I guess so, and thereby, I guess, if you need, I guess, so to call them and contact them directly. I guess so. Feel free. HCI. We're known as OSHPD, I guess so, but ever since October 4th, I guess our name has changed, is the Department of Healthcare Access Information. So we'll get used to it, I guess so, but we're the same people. We're providing, I guess so, the same services, if not more. Okay, we're going through transformation and our services actually get augmented, I guess so they get more expanded, and we're here for you. So a lot of things are happening. I had the opportunity to share some of those occurrences, I guess, or changes, if you will, I guess, so with various other chapters. Again, be tuned, I guess, so our goal is to provide not just service, but provide valuable service. So as we're looking forward towards 2030, it's important, I guess, so to know, I guess, so that we don't have, I guess, so much time, I guess, so thereby, I guess, in this case, we got to act very quickly. And the subjects of Mpc3 and Mpc3, okay, so they're very pertinent, especially right now, because there are questions. So I'll give you a little bit of intro, okay, so in case that we do have attendees, okay, so that they don't know some of the precurrencies. So in 1994, okay, so the statute changed and required that all existing hostel buildings need to be evaluated. They were evaluated and they were placed in, again, the appropriate performance category for each building. And again, okay, so through the Hostel Building Safety Board and the industry in full participation, it was decided that we had to have 5 performance categories, SPC 1 through SPC 5. All the pre-73 buildings, because that's when the Seismic Safety Act took place, okay, so, and created a new performance criteria for hospital buildings, which basically have become de facto around the world. They were either placed in 1 or 2. 1, buildings that pose threat to life. 2, buildings that they just made, okay, so in this case, what we call life safety performance, okay, so which in reality, okay, so they still pose some form of risk to life, but it's very low. So all post-1973 buildings, they were placed in 3s, 4s, and 5s, okay, so which, again, okay, so depending on when they were built, the codes that they were constructed, okay, so the deficiencies that they had, and so on. So in 2000, all the evaluations were collected, and the buildings basically, okay, as you see here, were ranked, okay, so in their corresponding performance category, show that we have a significant number of buildings that they pose risk to life, SPC 1s. So as you can see, okay, from this graphic, okay, we had 1,027 buildings in SPC 1 and, okay, so 200 buildings in SPC 2. Now, the next step, it was to basically go through the seismic evaluation, I guess, the reports, I guess, so justification, everything else, I guess, so, and then quantify, I guess, so if the evaluations were done appropriately or so on. In the meanwhile, I guess, so hospitals had until 2008, I guess, so to correct those deficiencies in SPC 1 buildings, so they're not any longer collapse hazards, or remove the acute care services from those buildings. Now, this graphic, okay, is a very interesting graphic, okay, so because from 2000 to 2007, there was not much progress done. As you can see, as a matter of fact, the SPC 1 buildings, okay, so were increasing in numbers, okay, so because some of the SPC 2s were actually through SPC 1s, okay, so, and, okay, so some SPC 1s were multiple buildings, okay, so in this case, okay, so because we talk about the seismic building and not the architectural building. But the fact is, I guess, as this graphic shows, I guess there's not much progress. The industry was not really doing progress, even though, I guess, so the law specifically says, I guess, so meet, I guess, so the 2008 deadline. Now, on our side of the equation, I guess, so OSHPAD, HSCI today, I guess, so our goal is, I guess, so to look for reasonable solutions. Make sure, I guess, in this case, that the seismic compliance program, it is as reasonable as it gets, okay, so, and then, okay, so we provide economic solutions, so thereby, okay, so we meet, okay, so the statutory requirements. From the early days of the program all the way to now, we always look, okay, so for, again, what is the latest, what's the greatest, what's the most recent knowledge, how can we incorporate it, how we can make it available, okay, so to the hospital owners, so that the system, okay, so actually, okay, so starts becoming more robust. Now, this is the same graph that I showed you earlier today. And you can see, okay, so that from 2007 through various innovative methodologies that we brought forward, again, okay, so hazards is one of them, which was a methodology that we introduced in order to enhance, okay, so the aspect worst to ones first. Meaning, okay, so that we utilize a probabilistic methodology, okay, so to quantify which ones were really the highest risk. And then, okay, so based on, okay, so the risk, okay, we reclassified some of those buildings to an SPC2. So now, where are we today? Okay, today, as you can see, we have about 700 SPC2 buildings. So we have 658 buildings. In the SPC2 category, but we still have 72 SPC1 buildings. When I say SPC2 buildings, okay, so here is, okay, so again, the paradox. They're not true SPC2 buildings, and that's why I subdivided the SPC2s. Remember what I said a minute ago, okay, so most of the SPC2s that we have today, they are truly SPC1s, but, okay, so they were reclassified SPC2s based, okay, so on a short window of risk, probabilistic risk, okay, so as far as the seismic hazards in their site, you know, in their location, in their vicinity. So 514 of those, okay, so we call them, I guess, SPC2Hs, because they have been reclassified through the probabilistic analysis of hazards. And the true SPC2s, either through retrofit or through evaluation, I guess, so are, I guess, so as you see there, 143. Now, there is a misconception of what really an SPC2 building means. Okay? So if you go, I guess, in our, building standards, I guess, in the regulation says these buildings do not significantly jeopardize life, but may not be repairable or functional following a strong ground moisture. Meaning, okay, so that they have reduced probability of collapse, that they may still have structural deficiencies, significant structural deficiencies, okay, so that they can lead, okay, so to damage, and the damage might be beyond any point of repair, and okay, so they're not going to be capable of providing services after a major event. So some people, okay, so they basically don't understand that these buildings can be red tagged, okay, so requiring complete evacuation, okay, so or yellow tag depending, okay, so on the type of damage and so on. They're not hospital grade buildings. So hospital grade buildings, okay, so as, okay, so again, not by the California requirements, by national standards, okay, so have to be, okay, so again, buildings that can be functional, okay, so, and that's why they're designed to different standards. Now, there are several issues with, again, a hospital building, okay, so basically, okay, so suffering damages in an earthquake, okay, so it's detrimental to the community, okay, so basically it is inversely proportional, okay, so to the resiliency of the community and so on. So that I include this slide, okay, so because we hear a lot of discussion about what an SPC2 building is, okay, so, and that's why I included this slide. Now, the good news is that, again, okay, so by 2025, okay, so we are projecting, as I said earlier, 673 SPC2 buildings. The bad news is that, again, okay, so there is a number of facilities, 60% of the facilities across California, they have at least one SPC2 building. So that's not encouraging. Now, where are they at? They range the gamut. Okay? So as you can see, they are on high seismicity areas as well as low seismicity areas. Low seismicity in California doesn't mean that there's no seismicity. Remember that the rankings of the buildings are commensurate to the local seismicity, meaning, okay, so that these buildings, even, okay, so through a long distance earthquake, okay, so may suffer, okay, so again, the consequences that I mentioned earlier. So that gives you, okay, so again, a distribution of those buildings across California. I will pass it, okay, so to Roy, okay, so, and Roy basically, okay, so it is going to move, okay, so to the discussion, okay, so on the main topic of SPC4D, and then, okay, so Ali Zoomer, okay, so is going to go, okay, so into the non-structural issues, okay, so which is equally important. Roy?
Okay, thanks, Chris. And my name is Roy Lobo. I'm the principal structural engineer with HCI. I will be going through, as Chris said, a very quick, high-level overview of SPC4D refresh. We'll be talking a little bit about the motivation, some of the challenges in what we were facing in creating this new performance standard of SPC4D. And then we are going to provide you some solutions on how you can upgrade your building from SPC1 or SPC2 to an SPC4D building. So what were the options? So this is now we're talking about 2013, 2015 timeframe. So at that time, when we came up with SPC4D, so what were the options from SPC4D? So Chris showed there were like about 672 buildings that currently now projected to be SPC2 by 2030. So at that time, there was about 700 buildings. So at that time, we had to convert these 700 buildings, which would not be able to provide service beyond 2030, would have to be either retrofitted, removed, replaced, or rebuilt into new hospital buildings. So those were the current options that were available. So we were looking for a new solution. And the intent of SB 953 was to encourage, these are for buildings that do not pose significant risk of collapse, that to encourage retrofits to enhancements to improve the ability of hospitals to remain operational for these kind of buildings. So that was the intent of SB 953 for the SPC2 buildings that were going to not be able to provide GAC services continuing beyond 2030. So what were some of the concerns for 2030 compliance? This was back in 2013 was that model codes were changing, and then it was becoming more and more costly because of code creep, etc., to then upgrade an existing building to then the SPC 5 category, which was the only option at the time. Rural and other hospitals in underserved areas had limited resources to upgrade to current code. Then the other thing was that SPC2 buildings, so these were or SPC1, SPC2 buildings, these were the buildings that were the original hospital buildings. They may be landlocked between other SPC buildings of higher SPC ratings. But if you take that building out of service, then it could actually cause the whole hospital to be non-operable. And then the hospitals may not have property because they don't have, because these are now for so many years, then all the area around is built up to build a new replacement hospital. So here is an example of an SPC2 or SPC1 landlocked building. So the original hospital is in the center here, and then all the other hospital buildings were built around it. So removing the main hospital, which is an SPC1 or SPC2 building, from service, then you were not, the hospital would no longer be able to function as a hospital. So what was the motivation on creating this SPC 4D performance category? So the motivation was that there are some buildings that are SPC 3, SPC 4 buildings that are permitted to continue to provide service beyond 2030. So we were thinking, okay, is it possible? And because at that time, the only option was to upgrade your building from SPC 1 or 2 to SPC 5. So is it possible to create a comparable SPC 4 building instead of going all the way to current code? And by doing that, we have less amount of retrofit. We put targeted retrofit to specific elements, and we can minimize reducing the disruption to ongoing services. And hospitals could use this option to strategize their master plan and come up with some cost-effective options. And was also to provide hospitals with another option for seismic compliance so that they can choose the approach that was most effective for them. So that was the motivation. And then we were looking for the statutory authority for us to do that. So we have that. It's given in Health and Safety Code section 18941. And it says that all hospital standards shall be administered and enforced, written on a performance basis consistent with state and nationally recognized standards for building construction. So using that authority, we were looking for a solution. And around the time of 2013, AAC 4113 had just come out, and they also had come out with a new performance level called damage control performance level. So this damage control performance level is a level between immediate occupancy and life safety. So that was given in the model code AAC 41, and that's shown in this figure here. So we have enhanced safety, shown by this blue arrow going up. So immediate occupancy, then damage control, then life safety. So enhanced safety is beyond life safety. So your building will not only be life safe, but also has the chance of being operable at the same time. And then you have reduced safety, which is limited safety and collapse prevention. So we had some options to look forward to look at, to explore, to see, okay, now what can we do with our SPC 4D buildings? So traditionally, we were just looking at life safety at that time, and the level of performance would be just about that. So your building would be damaged, but but it would be life safe, but you may not be able to operate and perform as a hospital building. Otherwise, you would have to upgrade it to an SPC 5. But then with this new damage control for risk category 4 buildings, we said, okay, could that be a viable option? So for SPC 2 buildings that Chris mentioned earlier, these are the pre-1973 buildings. These are the buildings that did not have the adequate seismic detailing. They had seismic vulnerabilities, etc. So the only option for SPC 2 buildings was to upgrade them to SPC 5. And SPC 5 buildings are buildings that were built from 1989 onwards, to the 1989 code and onwards. However, there was a whole range of buildings that were classified as either SPC3 or SPC4. SPC3 was the moment frame buildings, but that's a separate category with the pre-Northridge connections. But SPC4 buildings, but they still had the seismic detailing connections. So these are the SPC4 buildings from the 1973 to 1988. So any building built in that period of time was classified as SPC4, and they could continue to provide service beyond 2030. So we said, is there a seismic performance category? We decided we'd call it SPC4D. And we picked a midway point called 1980. CBC said, is there a midway point that said, okay, if we upgrade now from SPC2 to SPC4D, is that good enough? And we thought, yep, that could be good enough. We can upgrade it to the 1980 California Building Code, and then it would be also adequate to provide acute care services beyond 2030. So the SPC4D approach, so we introduced this new performance category. These were for the non-conforming SPC 1 and 2 buildings that could be upgraded to SPC4D, and then that would be permitted to provide service beyond 2030. So what is SPC4D? So SPC4D is a performance category assigned to existing non-conforming hospital buildings that have been demonstrated either by analysis or retrofit to be equivalent to the minimum prescriptive requirements of the 1979 Building Code, including California amendments, and that became the 1980 California Building Code. So if you could show that your upgrade met this requirement, then we would say that would be classified as SPC4D, and you could continue to provide service beyond 2030. So what were the options? So then what were the upgrade options for your SPC1 and SPC2 buildings? So these are buildings, as Chris mentioned, have a big range from low risk of collapse to significant risk of collapse. And you could only upgrade them previously to SPC5. Now we said you can upgrade them to SPC4D or SPC5. So what's the performance expectation for the SPC4D building? So they may control damage and permit return to function similar to SPC3 and 4 buildings, but not as quickly as SPC5 buildings. So the performance should be, so we said, the performance should be in the same range of other buildings. If we have buildings that are from 1973 to 1988 that can continue to provide service beyond 2030, then I should be able to retrofit up to that standard. And then we said however, there will be some buildings that we should not permit even to be in the able to upgrade to SPC4D. And we said those buildings are buildings on a fault. These are the buildings in the fault zone, which is 50 feet from a known fault trace, unreinforced masonry, or precast concrete buildings. So those are collapse hazard buildings. And we said those were not eligible for upgrading to SPC4D. So possible compliance issues using the CBC 1980. So these are some of the challenges that we had when we said, okay, we chose a building, a standard, okay, CBC meet that. But these are prescriptive requirements that had special seismic detailing. And now you can't get an existing building now to meet these prescriptive requirements. So therefore, you had to look for alternate approach. And the alternate approach was a performance-based approach that is given in AAC 41 that permits you to then evaluate your building, which has more brittle members, do not have the same ductility as prescriptive provisions. And we said, so if we then follow AC methodology, which has different performance levels, you can decide based on the hazard risk. We can use those to then use that as a standard to then say, okay, this is comparable to an SPC4 building if you upgrade it to this level, and that will be good enough to then continue to provide service beyond 2030. So we decided to choose two hazard levels. One is the hazard level. One was the BAC 1E earthquake, which is a 20% in 50-year earthquake, or a 225-year earthquake, and a hazard level 2, which is a BAC 2 earthquake. This is your rare earthquake, which is a 975-year event. So we said at the more frequent level earthquake, we said, if you need to meet the damage control performance level, okay? And for the rare event, we said, we figured out that the collapse prevention performance level was adequate, And we said if they can upgrade the building to meet these two seismic performance levels, then they could continue to provide service beyond 2030. And this is shown graphically. You know, structural engineers like to show things in graphically with pushover curves and things like that. So they have the immediate occupancy by this building up here. Immediate occupancy show that after a strong motion event, your building may see some damage, you know, but lights will still be on, still be operable, etc. Then if you move on to the damage control is midway between life safety and immediate occupancy, you may see some additional damage, lights may be off and things like that. But we said that is good enough because that is the same performance expectation for an SPC 3 and 4 building. So we said, so if you have a strong earthquake, design earthquake, if you can meet this performance, that was good enough. And then if you have a very strong earthquake, a very rare event earthquake, then it should not be collapsed, right? So the collapse prevention performance level was the adequate level for this very rare event earthquake for these buildings to survive. I mean, it will probably not, they'll have to be evacuated, etc. But we hope those are not frequent, and it's a 1,000-year event earthquake. So which option do I use for a 1980 CBC or AAC 41? So I can use the CBC 1980, which is the simpler method, but that's a prescriptive method. And most buildings will not be able to comply with that prescriptive method, and they would have to use the performance-based approach using the two hazard level criteria and for AAC 41. So if you could then upgrade to those standards, then you could classify your building as an SPC 40. Now, in order to get your building upgraded to SPC 4D for your SPC 1 or 2 buildings, then what do you need to submit to HCAI? So you will need to submit existing construction documents, and then you need field testing, inspection, and observation. So why do I need field testing, inspections and observation? Because buildings non-conform, these are pre-1973 buildings, they were non-conforming buildings at the time. And so they didn't have the necessary test and inspection. So we need to have some measure to say, okay, we do some amount of testing to confirm that the materials that you use was, you can justify that, and then your analysis will then prove out whether it can sustain that level of seismic hazard. And we have a new name for that. It's called an MTCAP program, which is a material testing and condition assessment program for the field testing and field observation program. So those are the documents you would need. So in summary, for the SPC 4D buildings, non-conforming buildings can be upgraded to SPC 4D to provide services beyond 2030. The CBC 1980 may be used to upgrade some buildings to SPC 4D because of the prescriptive requirements, and so not all would be able to use that approach. And then we had AAC 4113 damage control performance level. This is for risk category 4 buildings defined as SPC 4D, then would be able to continue to provide service beyond 2030. And the checklist that we had for upgrading from SPC 1 to SPC 4, those would no longer be valid. So retrofit was not the only cost. The cost of seismic compliance only didn't cost of the retrofit alone. They also had other costs involved. And that's where the hospitals need to be cognizant of that. And those are accessibility requirements. So whenever you're retrofitting an area, then the path of travel also needs to be considered, and accessibility requirements for that path of travel would also, upgrades would be required. Then while you're working in areas that are being retrofit, then your building is going to continue to provide service beyond 2030. Therefore, some NPC work may also go hand in hand with that. And then you'll have to close down spaces, etc., for getting the retrofit done. So that additional cost would come in as play. So we tried to streamline the seismic compliance process to upgrade the building to SPC 4D. You submit an analysis, you submit to the seismic compliance unit. That's Ali Zumar is the supervisor for that. And then you submit the retrofit projects to the HCAI regions. And then once the work is done, then a reconciliation would need to be done to then change the rating from a 1 or 2 to SPC 4D once everything is being done. So with that, I go back to Chris.
The reason why we included this slide right here is because I'm hearing some interesting conversations around the community that the SPC4D category, okay, so basically is retrofitting to this category specifically, okay, so will produce a building that may see damage, I guess, and you should retrofit to SPC5, okay, so I hear all kinds of interesting discussions, I guess, in the community. Retrofitting to an SPC5, is it possible? Yeah, but again, I guess you're dealing with existing buildings, so the cost is going to be fairly high. So that's why, I guess, so we created, I guess, so the SPC4D category for all the reasons that Roy, I guess, so highlighted. And again, I guess, so these are existing buildings. These are buildings that basically are, again, of the age of 40, 50 years. So the, again, enhancement costs, I guess, so have to be commensurate, I guess, so to what you're targeting, I guess, so, and so on. So thereby, when you do choose your consultants, okay, so be very carefully and choose people that basically, okay, so know what they're doing. So they have proven record working with us, okay, so in major retrofit projects, that they have experience with existing buildings and materials and familiarity, okay, so with ASC 41, okay, so because again, as Roy said, okay, so you can use the prescriptive code. So there are certain buildings that the prescriptive code works very well, and there are certain buildings that it doesn't work very well, and thereby a little bit more sharpening of the pencil warrants in order to resolve some of those deficiencies analytically, rather than bricks and sticks, which are very costly, okay, so disruptive and so on. So, and of course, I guess, so here in the state of California, I guess, so because of statutory requirements, it has to be a licensed structural engineer. That's the reason why I included this slide, I guess, so because when people say that the SPC4D category is it's a lower category, and thereby, I guess, so in this case, you should be retrofitting to an SPC5, it's the owner's option. But there is a very statutory-based reason, okay, so a very engineering-based reason, okay, so that we included here, okay, so in order for us, okay, so to control the costs, make things, okay, so achievable and doable, and move forward, I guess, so with seismic compliance. With this, I guess, so we'll pass, I guess, so the floor, I guess, so to, or this screen, I guess, so to Ali Zoomer, I guess, so, and then we'll continue. While Ali, I guess, so is getting ready, our apologies, I guess, so for going as fast as we're going, I guess, so, but we want to leave enough time for questions, I guess, in the end.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? All right. So I'd like to thank California Society for Healthcare Engineering for this opportunity. This is a very key group with a very diverse background that touches all of these aspects. When I heard this group, I was like looking at some resources. So there's like tremendous amount of resources on the website and the people. So anyways, I liked it a lot. I became a member yesterday. So I'm looking forward to learning more from this group. So as Chris and Roy mentioned, you know, today's presentation is narrow focused. There's a lot to talk about. And this group plays a lot of important role. And for my presentation under Mpc3 especially operational plan, is a very, very important thing to bring up and discuss this with this group. So with that, I'll just go. I'll go some slides very fast. We will still provide these slides to the group. The Health and Safety Code basically gives us the authority to develop regulations. But in terms of non-structural, we're talking about most critical non-structural systems and prioritize timeframes to upgrade those. So we look at risk of failure during an earthquake, and looking at this as Chris mentioned, we wanted to see something practical, innovative ways to bring the facilities to compliance. So again, back in 2008, 2000 to 2008, there were 5 categories, 1 through 5. And back in 2019, this new performance category came, Mpc3 and that 4D really didn't change the fundamentals, but it created an in-between category between 3. Let me put my laser pointer. Between 3 and 4. So just to give a really broad overview, one is basically it's not evaluated. The bracing and anchorage requirements do not meet. And coming from 1 to 2, there are certain things that requires anchorage, such as communications, emergency power supply, bulk medical gas, fire alarms, and emergency lighting. So it's a very limited look in terms of Mpc2. From Mpc2 to 3, first you need to be 2, and then Mpc3 really gets into certain critical care areas. So again, Mpc3 is about anchorage and bracing of equipment and utilities. So I'll just skip Mpc4D for now. So from 3 to 4, the difference is now pretty much everything in the building needs to be anchored. And depending on the year, you may get automatic Mpc4. If it is an older building, it needs bracing and an evaluation for the entire building. Mpc5, which is another a huge topic, that's not about anchorage, but it's more about the resiliency, the supply of water, and the fuel supply, and so on and so forth. So back in 2019, Mpc4D came. It modified just a little bit Mpc3 requirements, and it added an operational plan, which I will talk about very soon. So looking at all those ratings, where are we today in California for general electric care buildings? So again, in terms of 4D look, the buildings that needs to be upgraded is this yellow pie and this light green pie. So we have a lot to work on. Now you may wonder, okay, how can I just find out what which building has which rating? So I put our website, and if you go to this link, and if you go to facility information, put your facility name or number in, and then click on the building list, you will see a list and all the details about SPC and NPC rating and what the deadlines are. It will show it right there. Now, before I hop on to 4D details, I just wanted to point out that there's a upcoming Mpc3 deadline. So depending on seismicity, some facilities need to comply with Mpc3 by January 1st, 2024. So there's a lot of questions about how to get there. We are helping a lot of facilities to get there. So seismic design category F means that it has a very high seismicity, and that's why the deadline is earlier than 2030 for Mpc3. I'm not going to go into detail about the interaction between the SPC and an Mpc with the deadlines. For again today's topic, Mpc4D deadline is 2030. Now, when we talk about 2030 deadline, that deadline is the final compliance date. So everything is constructed, done, and getting the Mpc rating. So code actually gives a timeline about how to get there. So in about 2 years or less than 2 years, all facilities with the general acute care buildings need to submit evaluation for MPC4, 4D, and 5. So I try to repeat this on every meeting. This is not the getting the rating. This is to submit the evaluation. But submitting evaluation means that it needs a lot of preparation, looking at the inventory, talking to the facility, and non-structural touches every single aspect of the facility. So there are a lot of studies going on right now, and I'm sure many of you are involved in those. So this is the target date for evaluation. The next deadline is after that evaluation. Sometimes everything is good, you get the rating, but if something is construction, then it's going to go to 2026 to submit construction document deadline, 2 years later permit deadline, and 2 years later getting it done. So I'll just skip this Mpc3. I just put the list. These are the areas that needs to be anchored. And Mpc4D, you need to be Mpc3, and then start looking at how what should we look at the areas that are not anchored in an Mpc3 building. So as I mentioned, Mpc4D, first you need to be 3, and Mpc4D breaks down into three different levels. So level 1, level 2, level 3. And all levels require operational plan. And that's the most questions that I get about what it is and what to do. Let's start with Mpc4D level 1. So let's say you have a general acute care building, and you have a small critical care area. And every building has some central utility plant or some source that supplies many different things. In the level 1 world or Mpc4D world, the level 1 is the minimum requirement. So level 2 or level 3, they are not required as a minimum. So you may ask, okay, then why should a facility go to level 2 or 3 if it is not a requirement? And you will see in a moment about why a facility may want to choose level 2 or level 3. So again, level 1 is Mpc3 plus operational plan. And I just want to point out that equipment in 1995 CBC table 1680, including equipment in the physical plant that serves these areas. So Mpc3 also requires anchorage of the equipment that is in the central utility plant or the place where it serves the building, not in between. So the utilities that goes from the cup to that critical care areas are not included in the bracing requirement under level 1. What about level 2? So level 2 now says that, okay, everything including level 1, and in addition to that, the utility in between needs to be braced from source to the critical care area. So that's a big difference between level 1 and 2. And also it has an elevator clause with a certain requirements. So again, the takeaway is the utility to be braced and an elevator. Of course, everything comes with operational plan, which I will come very soon. Level 3 includes level 2, and basically it has more areas that the hospital choose. So if hospital says that, okay, I want this area needs to be included in that bracing and evaluation, then that's level 3. So level 3 doesn't have a predetermined set of areas. It's more hospital, it's a hospital decision. Now, the famous operational plan. First of all, I want to stress that this is an owner approved plan. So in the beginning, we saw few plans that only the design professional prepared, but not consulted with the owner. So when we brought in the owner, then that plan changed completely. So as design professionals, when it comes to operational plan, facility has to be involved. So this group with this background is a key player on this operational plan. So because the facility, they know their buildings the best and what they want to do. So operational plan is really important in that aspect. So the main idea of operational plan is under 4D. If an area is not braced, those areas, we are assuming that there will be damage after an earthquake. So a lot of things may not work. And since those areas will not be working, what's the alternative manner to accommodate continuation of critical care operations? So, well, it's easy to say, but it brings a lot of planning. It requires a lot of planning behind this alternative manner, or what that means. So again, this is about the hospitals wishing to keep those operational for a minimum of 72 hours. So how can we get there? Well, in order to shape this plan, we put some minimum pointers to fill out so that we talk about this alternate means in a more focused way. So an executive summary, a narrative of management of utilities, sustainability, and alternate means. We will publish this operational plan on our website. So please keep that in mind. All right. So what are the items to include in operational plan? For level 1 areas, basically these are critical care areas. The schematic of all utilities serving the areas, materials on hand to make necessary repairs, prioritization of essential electrical system, and a plan to maintain these areas in operation, including all necessary utilities and equipment for functionality. And also an arrangement is in place to transfer the services in the event the hospital services are not operational or cannot be made operational immediately. So again, let me go back one. So these are for level 1 areas. There are further items in the operational plan. So mainly these items, and I will talk about each one of them individually quickly. So central sterile supply. Again, the key word here is means to obtain central sterile supply items. Dietary, means to obtain food. Pharmaceutical, again, means to obtain that water supply, medical gases. So it all comes down to, what's your alternative? When it comes to emergency power, it has a set of pointers on how to get there. For those of you who worked on Mpc3, these items will be easy to answer. So what I recommend to the facilities is when you are working on 4D, and on the side, start working on MPC5, because there are some overlap between the statements in 4D operational plan versus 5. So if you already have answers for 5, just copy those and put it in 4D, because anything acceptable to 5 is acceptable to 4D. So rather than reinventing the wheel on 2 different evaluations to save time and future strategy, I recommend marrying those. If MPC5 is not on the table at this moment, then at least think the future items and bring some of those here. Emergency power, ventilation, waste disposal. Again, what are the alternate means? 9 minutes, so I'm gonna just go through one example and I'll try to stop. So let's give an example. You have a GAC building. Let's say there's no critical care area in that building, and no kitchen and no areas listed in Mpc3 in the building. So then what do? Well, let's say this has admin spaces and med-surg beds. Okay. So looking at level 1 area, so I'm asking the question, is that critical care area? No, then these areas don't exist, so you don't have to provide these. Central sterile supplies, let's assume there's none here. No kitchen, so no dietary, no pharmacy, so no pharmaceutical services. So what are the items that are left for the operational plan? Water supply, med gas, e-power, ventilation, waste disposal. So those are the statements that the team should focus on. Example 2, let's say you have critical care area, then what's the plan? Let's say there's ICU, pharmacy, let's say no kitchen and no central sterile supply. Well, yes, there's critical care area, but if you are seeking level 1, then you do not need to brace these utilities, but we need to know where they are. So what we ask is, okay, give us a schematic for those and the other items. But if you have items that don't apply for this building, then cross them out and focus on the rest of the items. Again, since there is a critical care area, the first part applies. Mpc4, again, some facilities, what they do is they look at 2 evaluations at the same time. They run Mpc4 and they look at Mpc4D and what are the things, what are the expected performances. And sometimes they, after looking at 4D, they go to 4. Sometimes looking at 4, they go back to 4D. So, so anyways, it's an option, but 4 requires bracing and evaluating all architectural equipment. So the exceptions in the Mpc3 areas don't apply. So this is very important. But I just want to emphasize that a lot of buildings do get or have gotten a lot of upgrades over the years. A lot of asphalt projects, TIs, many things. The rooms that get full TI, there is no need to do re-evaluation in those spaces. So what we ask in the Mpc4 evaluation is that just bubble the areas that had a complete, let's say, regut. We don't need to look at, again, the things that were inspected and installed and is conforming. So a lot of design professionals see that, hey, there was like, okay, half of the building is already done, so I don't need to look at those. Now let's focus on the things that were not looked at or not upgraded. So when when those things kind of put together in an evaluation, sometimes the facility see that, okay, there's not much to do anyway, so maybe 4 is a good option. The good thing in 4 is there's no operational plan, so you don't have to try to come up with innovative ways to say this is the alternate means. I put this link because there's tons of questions about MPC. So if you go to this link, there's like 40, 50 different frequently asked questions. So you can just look at those. So if you just copy this link and then put it there, you hopefully will find answers. If not, feel free to email us or call us. We will be happy to chat with you. With that, thank you so much. Really appreciate the opportunity to present this here.
I want to echo what Ali just said. You do not need an interpreter. Call us, email us, whatever works for you. You do not need an interpreter. We're going to sit down and we're going to see exactly what you have, and we're going to advise you appropriately.
Thank you. That was a great presentation. Are there any questions from the team? I see Mr. Mosley, you have a question?
Actually, I was just trying to clap and say thank you. I know that looked like a hand raising, but I'll just say it, live here. Thank you to everyone, all the presenters. This has really been helpful overview, and I appreciate it.
Well,
yeah, it was a pretty quick presentation. A lot of great information. One of the things I'm glad you touched on was the deadline for 1/1/24 and 1/1/26, because that's a big evaluation and submittal that we need to do for everybody. One question I did have real quick is, currently on some of my projects, I have to get CDPH approval and I have to get OSHPAD approval, and then it's a back and forth. In these operational plans, is it just the facility and then HCI?
That's a great question. So operational plan does not require CDPH approval. The CDPH approval comes into picture when you are working on Mpc3 water rationing plan. That's where we need the CDPH approval. So great question.
Great.
On this topic, okay, so again, we understand that you got to deal with multiple agencies, and things can become fairly problematic. We have found ourselves, I guess, to play the broker between the Board of Pharmacy, between CDPH and other licensing boards or agencies and so on, I guess. So we will be there for you in every step of the way. Why? I guess so because time is not on our side.
Great. Last call for any questions. Look here. I don't see it. Chris, Ali, and Roy, thank you so much. We very much appreciate your partnership with Tishi, and I hope you have a great day. And to everybody else, have a great day, and take care. Be safe out there.
If we don't see you between now and June, we will see you in June.
Right. See y'all.
Take care. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.